Mysterious WV wishes to thank the family of Judy Petty, along with the American Military University, for their invaluable assistance in preparing this feature. A link to their podcast, Safe Haven, an extensive expose concerning the death of Judy Petty, is located in the video's description. Parkersburg, West Virginia, Wednesday, February 6, 2008. At around 5 p.m., 48-year-old Judith Petty left her grandmother's home in the northern part of the city. She planned to walk 7 blocks to the west to return some books and DVDs to the Wood County Library. It was a route she had walked on many previous occasions and knew well. By 8 p.m., darkness had fallen, and Judith had still not returned home. Her family contacted the local authorities and set out on their own to search for Judith. Sadly, their efforts would be in vain. Judy Petty was never seen alive again, and 15 years later, her family and friends are still in search of answers.
Two days after her disappearance, Judy Petty's remains were discovered in the burned-out remnants of an outbuilding on her family's farm. The destructive force of the fire had been so complete that no cause or origin could be determined. To this day, no one knows just why Judy chose to travel to her family's farm, nor how she got there. In fact, Judy's entire case is one long string of puzzling questions with precious few answers. There is even debate as to whether or not Judy's death was the result of a homicide or a bizarre and tragic accident. This feature was filmed with the complete cooperation of the Petty family and the American Military University.
Situated along the Ohio River just below Marietta, Parkersburg, West Virginia is a vital crossing town for those headed westward towards the open plains. Named for Revolutionary War hero Alexander Parker, Parkersburg, originally known as Newport, was chartered as a city by the state of Virginia in 1860. For many years, it served as the terminus of the Baltimore and Ohio Railway. By the late 1800s, it had become a vital cog in the oil and gas machinery which was helping to drive West Virginia's growing economy. To this day, it remains an industrial center for the production of glass, textiles, plastics, and polymers. In 2020, its population was steady at just under 30,000. Judith Lynn Petty was born on January 31, 1960, in Waverly, West Virginia, just one of 5 daughters born to Marvin and Joan Petty. She attended grammar school in Williamstown and in 1978 graduated from Williamstown Christian High School. Throughout her all-too-short life, she worked at various locations around the region, including RGIS Inventory and Bell Atlantic of Parkersburg. Judy never married, but was affectionately known by her many nieces and nephews as Aunt Judy. She had a reputation as a kind and caring individual, ready and willing to help whenever and wherever needed. In 2008, Judy was working as a primary caregiver to her maternal grandmother, Elaine Wilson. It was a full-time job, but one which Judy embraced with dedication. Judy was a diabetic, and although she owned a car, she more often than not preferred to make her way around town by walking. The north-central location of her grandmother's home placed it within easy walking distance of most essentials, and the neighborhood was not known as a high-crime area. As with many cases we have profiled, Judy Petty's last day is reported to have started and progressed like any other. Though the exact time is a matter of conjecture, what is known for certain is that Judy left her grandmother's home sometime during the late afternoon. She told her family that she planned to walk to the Wood County Library, approximately 1 mile to the west on Emerson Avenue. Records indicate that the books and DVDs Judy had borrowed were returned that day, though authorities have been unable to locate anyone who actually saw Judy at or near the library that day. Assuming that Judy did make it from her grandmother's home to the library, her options after dropping off the books would have been numerous. It is liberally estimated that Judy would have arrived at the library at approximately 5:30 p.m. Given the time of year, this would have left her with approximately 30 minutes of daylight, plenty of time to return to her grandmother's home. Judy, however, did not return home, and her actions over the next several hours are also unknown. What is known is that well after the sun had set, Judy was reportedly spotted walking along Laurel Creek Road, several miles east of her grandmother's home and well into a rural section of Wood County. Judy's family knew that she enjoyed walking and were not alarmed when she did not return home immediately. However, by 8:30 p.m., their anxiety began to increase. Judy did not take her cell phone with her, and given that she was a diabetic, they feared she may have suffered a hypoglycemic attack with no means of contacting them. At 10 p.m. that night, Judy's family contacted the Parkersburg Police Department to file a missing persons report. They were told, however, that no official report could be made until 24 hours had passed. Fearing that time was against them, Judy's family fanned out to search for her themselves. Judy's grandmother's home was located along 36th Street, also known as the Old St. Mary's Pike. As this road offered a quasi-direct route to the Petty's family farm, Judy's father, Marvin, concentrated his search to the east. For hours that night, Marvin drove the back roads east of Interstate 77, stopping several times at the gate leading to the family farm. Finding nothing out of the ordinary and no sign that Judy had been in the area, Marvin decided not to attempt the rough uphill drive to the farmhouse and grounds. Marvin continued his vehicular search without luck until around 2 a.m. At dawn, Judy's family again fanned out to search the area. Marvin again drove east to the family's farm. The weather had improved somewhat, and this time he did attempt to drive up the lengthy, unimproved road to the farm. Marvin made it about halfway up the winding, unimproved road before he was forced to stop his truck and cover the remaining distance by foot. When he reached the crest of the hill, he was met with a sight which caused his heart to sink. The farmhouse and an outbuilding had been consumed by fire. Flames, approximately 2 feet high, were still rising from what had been the center of the family's home. Marvin wasted no time. He descended the hill, obtained a cell phone from a neighbor, and then went back up to the farm where he had a signal. He called 911, and before long, fire, police, and rescue units began arriving at the foot of the hill. The treacherous nature of the driveway made it impossible for any of the emergency vehicles to actually reach the fire. Several firefighters from the Waverly and Deer Walk volunteer fire departments were able to ascend the hill using a 4-wheel drive brush truck. By the time they reached the scene, the fire had all but burned itself out. Both the farmhouse and outbuilding had been burned to the ground. A motorcycle and truck had also been consumed by flames, and the ground around a nearby tree had been blackened in an odd circular fashion. Authorities concentrated their attention on the smoldering remains of the old farmhouse. The destruction was complete, and Chief Danny Goodwin with the Wood County Fire Investigation Team opined that it would likely be impossible to determine the cause of the fire. The extreme heat prevented a comprehensive search of the area until the following day. During the interval, Judy's family continued their search, and word of Judy's disappearance was broadcast by local television and radio stations. On Friday, February 8th, a more extensive search of the farmhouse's remnants was carried out, but no sign of Judy Petty could be found. Bone fragments were found amidst the debris, but were determined to be animal bones and deer antlers. Sadly, whatever hope may have sprung from the initial search would soon evaporate. On Saturday, February 9th, a search was made of the outbuilding, which had also been burned to its basement. Huddled in a corner just off the bottom of a set of concrete steps, the badly burned remains, later identified as Judy Petty, were found. Again, the ferocity of the fire made a positive identification extremely difficult. Authorities were only able to confirm Judy's identity through her dental records. Initial theories centered on a tragic accident. It was felt by some that Judy had made her way to the family's farm and started a fire for warmth. Somehow, the fire grew beyond Judy's control, and she was overcome. Medical evidence, however, tended to discount this tentative theory. An autopsy revealed that there was no carbon monoxide in Judy's lungs, indicating that she had been dead before the fire started. Further analysis revealed the presence of an antidepressant in Judy's system, but the amount was determined to be within normal limits. While an exact cause of death could not be determined, the medical examiner's office labeled Judy's death as extremely suspicious and recommended further investigation. To that end, Judy's remains were subsequently sent to the Smithsonian Institution for a more in-depth analysis. The deeper analysis indicated that damage to Judy's bones and skull had likely been caused by the fire. The extremely poor condition of the remains made it impossible to determine if any other injuries, such as bullet or stab wounds, had been inflicted. Although the absence of CO2 in Judy's system indicated that her death preceded the fire, the ultimate ruling of the Smithsonian was the same: undetermined. The elemental force of nature had indeed worked its will fiercely. Chief Danny Goodwin's fear would eventually come to pass, as the cause of the fire could not be determined and was also officially listed as undetermined. Fire officials were unable to ascertain which structure had ignited first or if the fires had been set simultaneously. They were also unable to determine if any kind of accelerant had contributed to the fire's ignition or intensity. Almost as if to add insult to tragedy, a serious mishap would later occur involving the internment of Judy Petty's remains. Ironically, the night Judy had died, 2 other individuals, young children, had also been killed in a separate house fire. At some point during the next week, Judy's remains became mixed up with those of one of the deceased children and were buried in the wrong plot in neighboring Jackson County. Although the unfortunate mistake was rectified, the incident was yet another shock to the Petty family, a family who were continuing to try and make some sense out of Judy's death. Jurisdiction for Judy's death fell to the Wood County Sheriff's Department, given that her remains had been found outside of the city limits of Parkersburg. In short order, authorities were able to confirm that Judy had left her grandmother's home in the late afternoon and was headed for the Wood County Library. Beyond this, however, her actions, motives, and state of mind were almost pure supposition. The distance and time involved were daunting. Judy had somehow traversed between 10 and 12 miles during the evening and nighttime hours. Neither authorities nor Judy's family had any idea just how or why she did so. Every question and theory which surfaced seemed to be rife with contradictions. To wit, Judy loved the outdoors and enjoyed walking. She was, however, a diabetic and weighed approximately 250 pounds. 10 to 12 miles would be well beyond Judy's range of comfort for travel by foot. Judy's remains were discovered in the cellar of an outbuilding on the family farm. Her family, however, vividly recalled that Judy detested this location as it was a known nesting site for snakes. The night Judy disappeared was quite cold, but if Judy had died as the result of trying to keep warm, why had she not taken refuge inside the farmhouse, where more than one source of warmth was readily available? Judy preferred to walk while in town, but did own an automobile for longer treks. If her planned destination was the family farm, why had she simply not taken her car? As with many features we have profiled over the years, the key questions surrounding Judy Petty's death center on her movements during the afternoon and evening of Wednesday, February 6, 2008. Did she indeed make the trek from her grandmother's home to the library? Then, just how did Judy get from the Wood County Library in Parkersburg to her family's farm? Again, her actions between points A, B, and C may be crucial in determining the answers. The residence occupied by Judy's grandmother in 2008 is located here, at the corner of 36th Street and Plum on Parkersburg's north side. It is situated directly across the street from Emerson Elementary School. 36th Street is actually the most direct route from the residence to the family's farm, either by car or foot. We will designate this as Point A. The Wood County Library, where Judy said she was headed, is located here, a little under a mile away along Emerson Avenue, a busy thoroughfare which traverses Parkersburg in a north-south manner. This we will designate as Point B. From Point A, the library can be reached by several different routes, one direct and the others circuitous. Judy's family believes that she took this route from her grandmother's home, keeping away from the busy thoroughfares and sticking to the residential back streets. If accurate, then Judy would have first left her grandmother's home and almost immediately turned left onto Plum Street. From here, she would have proceeded south before turning right onto 34th Street, walked 2 blocks west to Central Avenue and again turned left, proceeded 1 block to the south before turning right onto 33rd Street. 33rd Street dead ends at Dudley Avenue, a busy roadway at almost any hour. Judy would have had to cross Dudley Avenue before proceeding south and turning right onto 31st Street. 31st Street then terminates at Emerson Avenue, where the Wood County Library is located. From here, Judy's options would have been many. The most direct route to the family farm where she was found would have had her proceeding north along Emerson Avenue and then turning right back onto 36th Street. She would then have proceeded east along 36th Street, crossed in front of her grandmother's house, and proceeded eastward where 36th Street becomes the old St. Mary's Pike and leaves the city of Parkersburg. The old St. Mary's Pike passes directly under Interstate 77 and then continues on in a generally northeastern direction until it reaches Deer Walk Highway, just south of State Route No. 2. Traveling south on the Deer Walk Highway would have taken Judy directly to the driveway of the family farm. The route is rural and not intended for foot traffic, but is also generally well-traveled and striped for most of the drive. However, at least one eyewitness has placed Judy in a completely different location in the hours following her departure from the library. Judy was seen walking in this general area along Laurel Creek Road. For whatever reason, Judy had apparently opted to take the proverbial low road. Laurel Creek Road branches off to the south of the old St. Mary's Pike here and winds its way up, down, and around the rural landscape. The roadway is often very narrow and unstriped. Why would Judy have chosen this less direct and more rugged route of travel? Her family has confirmed that Judy would often take her elderly grandmother for rides around the region and made an attempt to find alternate routes of travel to offer a variety of scenery. They have also confirmed that Judy had driven this low-road route with her grandmother on at least one previous occasion. However unappealing, the location where Judy was spotted along Laurel Creek Road is an area which was at least known to her. Laurel Creek Road, also known as County Route 18, wends its way for several miles through the rural countryside before eventually reaching Almond Hill Road here. It is believed that Judy turned left onto Almond Hill Road and continued walking, now in a southeasterly direction. Less than a mile on, Almond Hill Road intersects with Jericho Road, which proceeds in a northerly direction. It is believed that Judy took Jericho Road and headed north for a time before she accepted a ride from a passing motorist. The man drove Judy the remaining distance to the driveway of her family's farm, a distance of approximately 1.3 miles. The motorist has stated that Judy seemed to be acting normal and did not evince any signs of distress, agitation, or sadness. The man recalls dropping Judy off at the farm gate along Deer Walk Highway, though he is uncertain of the exact time. From here, Judy would have had to walk the 1/3 mile distance along the rugged, muddy driveway in order to reach the farm and outbuilding where her remains were later discovered. The motorist who dropped Judy off at the base of the driveway is certain that the woman he transported was indeed Judy Petty. Judy had also been sighted at various other points along the circuitous southern route. Curiously, other motorists later reported that they too had stopped and offered Judy a ride, but that she had politely declined the offer. If this is the case, then why would Judy, after having refused vehicular transport on previous occasions, opt to traverse the remaining 1.25 miles to the family farm by car? Could her feet have finally begun to give out? But if this is so, then how was she able to manage the 1/3 mile trek up the unimproved driveway to the farm's flatland? Had Judy actually covered the entire distance from point B to point C by foot? Given the time of the year, the sun would likely have set by the time Judy turned from the old St. Mary's Pike onto Laurel Creek Road. The temperature would have been falling, and the area into which she was walking would be growing more and more remote and less illuminated. The time frame involved is also critical. Unfortunately, we do not know the exact time that Judy left her grandmother's home. Her family initially reported that it may have been as early as 2 or 3 p.m., but later revised this estimate up to 5 p.m. Early newspaper accounts also reported the time Judy had left her home as 5 p.m. The later the time, the more difficult the supposed trek would have been, and the greater the likelihood that Judy would have been spotted while walking. Curiously, there are no definitive sightings of Judy from the time she left her grandmother's home until she was spotted along Laurel Creek Road. One eyewitness thinks he may have seen Judy walking eastward along the old St. Mary's Pike, but this sighting also cannot be confirmed. Judy's suspected route from point B to point C would have taken just over 4.5 hours, first by foot, and then the final 1.33 miles by car. Assuming the time Judy left the library was around 5:30 p.m., then she could not have reached the location along Jericho Road where she was picked up by the motorist until approximately 10 p.m., this, of course, assuming that the route was traversed entirely by foot. It should be noted at this point that some earlier renderings of Judy's possible route of travel show a course which deviates from Laurel Creek Road and proceeds along Copperhead Road to the Deer Walk Highway. This would have cut the walking time to just over 3 hours. However, the route is an impossibility. It traverses private property, covers an area where, for all intents and purposes, there is no road, and completely circumvents the locations along Laurel Creek and Jericho Roads where Judy was spotted. The route is, essentially, an aberration of inaccurate GPS mapping. We are therefore left with the ages-old question: just how did Judy get from here to here? More importantly, was she seen in a particular area at a particular time by any other witnesses? Judy's family, as well as the authorities, feel that identifying any additional witnesses to Judy's walking trek and fine-tuning its timeline is the greatest single hope for a breakthrough in her case. Along with Judy's unexplained and unknown movements, the timing and origin of the fire at the Petty family farm is equally as puzzling. Until as late as 2 a.m., Judy's father, Marvin, had driven to and past the property on several occasions. At no time did it appear to him that a fire was blazing on the plateau above. In fact, no residents of the area reported having seen the blaze at any point during the night or early morning. They also did not report hearing any screams or calls for help. The Petty farmhouse was a 2-story structure constructed almost entirely of wood. By the following morning, it would have been reduced to ashes. Fully engulfed, flames and smoke from this structure would almost certainly have been visible to Marvin Petty or anyone else in the vicinity during the night. When Marvin Petty discovered the remnants of the farmhouse the following morning, he noted that flames, approximately 2 feet high, were still rising up from the debris. Unlike the outbuilding, the farmhouse had no basement, so its frame and interior would have collapsed to the bare ground and burned quickly. It was also noted that the night of February 6th had been both cold and windy. The elevated location of the farmhouse and other structures would have exposed them both to sustained and gusting winds, noted to have been as high as 33 miles per hour. If flames were still visible as late as 9 a.m., then just how early the previous evening could the fire have started? Sadly, the extent of the destruction and the lack of any witnesses have made this determination all but impossible. The official report filed by the West Virginia Fire Marshal's Office notes that the ground between the farmhouse and the outbuilding, a distance of approximately 32 feet, was untouched, and a camper trailer located adjacent to the outbuilding was also completely undamaged. Was it simply a fluke that the camper had completely escaped damage when both a motorcycle and a truck had each been consumed by flames? The fire marshal's report also noted that Judy's body was found lying near the doorway in a south to east direction. Judy's head appeared to be facing to the east and her feet to the south. Thus, her body would have been laying in this general position. Photos taken at the scene by the Petty family vividly illustrate the ferocity of the Holocaust. The truck had been completely gutted, and the motorcycle effectively stripped of anything not made of metal. Curiously, a circular area around a nearby tree had been singed black by the flames. Authorities concluded that if the fire had not been set in multiple locations, then it could have spread by way of airborne embers. However, as the cause of the fire was listed as undetermined, it is virtually impossible to reconstruct either the genesis or the progression of the blaze. Did it start in the outbuilding and spread to the farmhouse, or perhaps the other way round? One fact, however, is inescapable. Whatever the reason, the fire must have been started by someone. It is numerically inconceivable to construct a scenario where Judy unexpectedly opts to visit the rural location on the same night that an electrical short or errant spark set the structures ablaze. The odds of two such unlikely occurrences just happening to coincide with one another are so astronomical as to essentially defy calculation. In other words, the fire was either started by a lighter or match, or else Judy Petty was the unluckiest individual of all time. Over 15 years have now passed since Judy Petty's death. Today, the scene of the fire is a haunting sight as it remains virtually unchanged. Almost everything has been left where it was found on the morning of February 7th, 2008. Various household items, including several stoves, sit huddled together where the Petty's farmhouse once stood. Its chimney has long since collapsed, and the bricks hauled away for reuse. Traversing the site, it is quite easy to visualize what must have once met the eye. The foundation and basement of the outbuilding where Judy Petty was found remain. Now cleared of debris, the spot where her remains were located is clearly visible. A chilling reminder of a life ended far too soon, as well as a clarion call to anyone willing to listen. A call that says loudly and clearly that questions still need to be answered. Did Judy Petty die as the result of a tragic accident, perhaps in an attempt to keep warm? Or was she murdered and her family's farm set ablaze in an effort to conceal the crime? Sadly, with either scenario, the end result is just another question. Why? Why?
Why? If Judy's death was the result of a tragic accident, why had she apparently walked to her family's farm in the first place? If her intent was to keep warm by starting a fire, why had she not simply taken shelter in the farmhouse as opposed to the small and cluttered outbuilding? And finally, if Judy's death was the result of a homicide, why would anyone want to kill her? Obviously, Judy's case is plagued by many more perplexing questions. Her family, as well as law enforcement, feel that the answers lie in just how Judy got from her grandmother's home to the family farm. They would be interested in hearing from anyone who may have seen Judy between the hours of 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. on Wednesday, February 6, 2008. Once more, we ask that you please pay close attention to the following summation.
Judy Petty is estimated to have left her home at 1736th Street in Parkersburg, West Virginia at approximately 5 p.m. on Wednesday, February 6, 2008. She was headed for the Wood County Public Library, just under a mile away, to return some books and videos. It was a walk that Judy had made on many previous occasions. If Judy made the trek via the neighborhood back streets without incident, then she would have arrived at the library at approximately 5:30 p.m. No one recalls having actually seen Judy drop off her books and videos at the library, and no security cameras were present. At some point during the next several hours, Judy was observed walking along Laurel Creek Road, several miles to the east and off her normal route home. At around 10 p.m., she was picked up by a motorist along Jericho Road. The motorist has stated that he did not notice anything unusual about Judy's appearance or demeanor. Judy was driven the final 1.33 miles to the driveway leading to her family's farm property. The driveway is unimproved and on a significant incline. It is approximately 1/3 of a mile in length. The following morning, at around 9 a.m., the farmhouse and outbuilding on the farm property were found to have been consumed by flames. The time and cause of the fire have never been determined. Judy Petty's remains were found lying in a south to east direction on Friday, February 8, 2008. Heavy debris from the fire had concealed Judy's remains from general view, and they were not discovered until the basement of the outbuilding was partially cleared. An autopsy found no carbon monoxide in Judy Petty's lungs, indicating that death had occurred prior to the fire. Authorities can only approximate the time of Judy Petty's death, most likely between the hours of 10:30 p.m. on February 6th and 7 a.m. on February 7th, 2008. No one in the area reported having seen the flames or smoke during the overnight hours or having heard a scream or cry for help. For additional details and context concerning the death of Judy Petty, please listen to Safe Haven, a detailed podcast created by the American Military University. A direct link can be found in the video's description. If you have any information concerning the death of Judy Petty, please contact the Wood County, West Virginia Prosecuting Attorney's Office at 304-424-1776 or the American Military University's Cold Case Tip Line at 224-225-5208.